Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ice Time, where we dive into some big ideas around the NHL. Mike Fink and Matthew Zator is back. It's good to have you back. Covers the Canucks, NHL at large, a whole bunch of things at the Hockey Writers. Matthew, how are you doing?
It's been a long summer. Long and
It,
slow, it seems. Nothing's really happened since probably the Jason Robertson signing. There's been rumors and stuff, but nothing has really happened. It's been a slow off season. Hopefully, we get something happening in the next few weeks. Obviously, training camp, but maybe some other trades or moves or something.
this is an odd off season because it started off hot, started off with all the trades and all the moves and all the stuff. And we're like, oh, we're in for a hot trade summer. This
Yeah,
is going to be the best summer ever. Like, you just to go back to the Kachuk trade and all those trades. And we
yeah,
were we were discussing on clean out day. I call it clean out day, but it was like that podcast where it was like
yeah.
all these trades are happening and we're gonna in for a great summer of all these big moves. And then it just went quiet. Like everyone, all the GMs did their cliche go to the cottage, go to the
Yeah.
lakes, and they all did it at once. I almost jokingly, I mean, I've asked, it's my favorite question is asking, are you in the best shape of your life or put on 20 pounds as the season gets underway? Because that's what everyone asks their prospects, but I digress. I brought you on because, I want to do I'm in this preview, but not preview. I don't want to call them previewing the NHL season ahead, but I did want to kind of like look at some teams around the NHL, like buy or sell. We'll do buy or sell sort of thing. And it's also good as I have some point totals in front of me. So this actually crushes two birds with one stone because as part of the Hockey Podcast Network presented by DraftKings, we can mention some of the odds and what to look at for reference. Obviously, these numbers are going to change and probably have changed since I printed them out, but I digress. I want to start with a general sort of question and looking at these teams and just sort of the question I want to ask. You look at all these teams and there's obviously their point totals and what their regular season projection looks like. Which team do you feel has the biggest range of any team where it's they could fall anywhere on the standings and you'd be like, yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
The first team that comes to mind is the Winnipeg Jets because how far down they went last season from being a President's Trophy winner, and they didn't make any really big changes in the offseason. Obviously, the Connor Hellebuck rumors have they've been on and off. It's not, and there was talk that he might be traded to the Buffalo Sabres. That obviously didn't happen. Teammates are saying, well, we want to keep him, we want him to stay. They still have a super, high-end skilled top line. They've got a pretty good blue line still. I think they could end up bouncing back and becoming a great team. On the other hand, they could be the same team as last season, and the drama around Hellebuck just kind of takes over, and all of a sudden they're back at the bottom of the league, or even just or maybe in the mushy middle. I don't know. It just seems like they're a team that I could see being one of the best again, and also one of the worst, or even just a middle team.
I find them fascinating because you look at their total, by the way, it feels low. It's 88 and a half, which is 88, 89 point range. And it's like, can they get above 90 points? Feels that way. My question is, what did they do to get better? / can you talk yourself into a great season from them? What does that look like?
For me, it's Vigo Bjork. He's a guy that's obviously first drafted and he's signed his ELC already. Seems like he's a guy that could maybe surprise and maybe play a top 6 role for the Jets this season. And if that happens, and he's just decent and takes that role, the Jets have a second line guy already, and he's young. I think if that happens, they could end up being a better team, because I think that was what they were missing last season. They brought in Jonathan Toews. He was okay. He wasn't obviously not as good as he's been before, and now he's pretty much retired. I think they were hoping maybe a bit more from him, and now Bjork could come in and be what they were hoping Toews would kind of be, and of course he's got a ton more of a ceiling, and one of their top prospects, maybe their top prospect now. And then you look at Cole Perfetti, who just signed that extension. He's a guy that I think they're hoping, and if he can break back to being what potential of what he has, they're a much better team again. So I mean, and of course they already have Scheifele, and Connor, and and Velarde, that those three guys, and they could be a really good team if some things go right.
I think the interesting part to them is that you're betting a lot on Viggo Bjork being that guy. They've almost said, it's your job.
Yeah.
It's here for you. That second line center spot. Mark Scheifele is still going to be their top line center. Viggo Bjork, it's like I don't think Velarde really is a center. So you're looking at, they've carved out that second line center spot for him where it's yours to take if you can take, if you're ready. And that's going to be the question, I think, because he's 18. I know they have the new rule where, interestingly, they could send him down to the AHL to develop. I don't think they will. No. It's one of those situations where if he's ready, they're just going to throw him in there. And if he's not a second line center, they'll play him on the third line. But it's an interesting position because it's like that's the thing that really gets them over the hump. And you look at a few years ago, they had the same sort of team that had won the President's Trophy. So it is Connor Hellebuck playing at a Hart Trophy level, playing at that elite level, which we've seen in the past, and he was hurt last season. So it's one of those, like, they didn't add pieces. I mean, aside from Bjork, and Bjork is a very good prospect and could be that high ceiling guy. And if he's really good, he's the top line center. And then all of a sudden you're looking at a Kyle Connor, Viggo Bjork ceiling, that kind of combination. You're like, that's really could be exciting for them.
Yeah.
But did they make any moves in free agency? I don't think they did. They didn't really. And it's one of those interesting situations with that in mind where it's like, okay, well, that's why they really do have that range. Another team, though, is interesting is that I look at their range similarly because, and you mentioned Connor Hellebuck, you mentioned teams he could be traded to, and one of the teams that was mentioned is the Buffalo Sabres. And I look at the Sabres, and it really feels like, yes, everything clicked last season, but they really feel like that unpredictable, could go either way type of team. I'll turn it over to you. I think their point total right now, they're projected at 95, 96 points, which interestingly is around the same as the Maple Leafs. So another team that has all that range. But I'll ask you, Sabres, you're buying, selling, holding, like 95, 96 points. Last season they led the Atlantic Division in points. So where are you where do you stand on them?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna hold on him. I think the one thing about that the team is they have a big range, and they're gonna miss Alex Tuch. I mean, they couldn't re-sign him. He was a big part of the team. I think that could be something, but they got so much young pieces that started to figure it out last season. And I think the goaltending is gonna be an interesting one too. Devin Levi, of course, is with the Oilers now. You're looking at UPL they're hoping that he can be a return maybe to being, rather than the up and down type goaltender, but being a consistent starter throughout the season. Because he did lose the starting job towards the end. So I mean, I think that's something that's going to be something to watch with the Sabres. I'm not really on either end. I mean, I don't buy them as a back to being that top Atlantic Division team. And I'm also not putting them back at a point where all of a sudden they're back out of the playoffs and being a bad team again. I think they're a team that's going to fight for that, of course, being in the playoffs, but going to be in that upper part of the Atlantic. I'm not going to say they're going to win it again because, this Atlantic Division is just, it's Maple Leafs return to form. It's going to get even tougher around that top because, how the Montreal Canadiens seem to be progressing. And I think they're going to be as good this season. But yeah, I think the Sabres are just going to be fighting for that. But I'm just not really ready to go either way on them, right? So,
yeah, and they're a team that you're holding on because you can, as much as the division's getting better and it's a stacked division, it is a talented division through and through. That you look at it and it's like, the Sabres, will they be the best team? Probably not. Will they be a top 3 team? Likely, but there's also the case where it's like, yeah, they could fall apart where it's Alex Tuch. They don't replace the points that he gave them. They can't find the answer there. It's Bowen Byram is traded where he wasn't the core defenseman that they built around, but he's a good defenseman. It's like if you can't replace him, then you're in trouble there. And then in net, if your goaltending trio of Lyon, UPL, and Colton Ellis, if that's not put together, then it's all of a sudden you're looking a little concerned there. And then at the same time, it's one of those, you look at how they played last season, and it all came together, and there's Zach Benson's getting better.
Yeah.
Consta Helenus is getting better. Those young players are only getting better. Tage Thompson and Rasmus Dahlin are in their prime, and all of a sudden they're like just here to stay, and all those pieces are there. So it's one of those you go glass half empty, glass half full on. I'll ask you though, when you look at the Atlantic Division, everyone's high on so many teams. Is there a borderline team? Because I'll take the Red Wings out of this. I think they're the easy target, saying sell on them. Who would you sell though on?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I would have said the Red Wings, but yeah, they're the obvious answer because of all the uncertainty around that and where Dylan Larkin's going to end up playing and all that stuff. But they're a whole different story. I want my initial one is, I'm not really sure on the Maple Leafs. I know, all the hype with Gavin McKenna. Is he going to click in the NHL right away? I don't know. Like, I think that's something they're betting will happen. Austin Matthews, I think his health is still a question mark. He's been rehabbing different things. I mean, there's conflicting reports of what he's rehabbing throughout the offseason. If he's not returning to that 40, 50 goal scorer, I think they're going to be back to what they were last season. I really don't know about even their coaching. I mean, they brought in I'm not sure about him. I really have question marks around the Maple Leafs still, even though they got the talent, they've got the big phenom coming in, and they're hoping that he's just going to be an NHL player, top line, top six guy. You're not really sure. We don't know. I mean, you'd think that a first overall pick is going to come in and be really good, or he could fizzle and not be as good. So I'm going to sell on the Maple Leafs. Returning to where everyone's kind of thinking right now.
It's interesting because I look at they're a very easy target to just be like a bounce back team, just because everything went wrong for them. And then you go through, like, you could talk yourself into that, where it's Stolarz is healthy. They get enough from Chris Tanev, and Darren Radish is there. So he gives them a reliable power play and just drives play from the point in general for them. Austin Matthews bounces back. The question with Austin Matthews, obviously, as much as Gavin McKenna's the make or break player, Austin Matthews really is he going to look like that elite player? I think the bigger concern for the Maple Leafs is if they're not good and Austin Matthews isn't that type of player, then it's obviously, what do you do? Well, obviously you'd say, okay, they lean more into a rebuild, they lean more into selling off pieces, but you're looking at a player like Austin Matthews all of a sudden what's his trade stock look like? Like, at first you're saying if you trade him now, I mean, they're not trading him now, but say they did, his value would probably be, a few top prospects, a first round pick, and a first round pick in a few years, just so it's a higher value type of pick. And you're looking at teams that would be interested in him, and it's those teams that are on the rise that would just want that missing piece. If he's not that type of player, though, again, struggles another season, it would be his third season in a row where he struggled, and he's still like 28, 29. So it's like, you don't expect that. But if it's that third, you're wondering, all right, what's happening here? Did he deal with an injury that really limited his ceiling? And those teams like the Sharks, the Kings, the teams that people are circling saying, okay, they just need that player, maybe don't want him. It's interesting. I'm looking at there's two teams that made the wild card last season. The Senators and the Bruins, they were the wild card teams. Are they sell teams for you?
I want to say with the Senators, because the thing is, you lose Brady Tkachuk, your captain. I mean, all the drama there's a bunch of stuff that's come out since. They might be better off him being out of the locker room. I don't know. But just losing a player like him is huge. I mean, they did get Eklund from the Sharks, who I think has high potential. They did go and grab Burakovsky, and that's a big contract for a guy that I don't think is worth that money. So I mean, Zetterlund might be really good because he played really well with Eklund when they were in San Jose. So, I mean, he might become the player that they thought they were getting. There's a lot of things that could go the Senators' way, but also in the same breath, a lot of things could go wrong. And, everything kind of just, they don't fit in. Losing Kachuk's a bigger deal. Allmark still hasn't really solidified as a number one guy for the Senators. He has proven it, obviously, with the Bruins in the past, and he was pretty good last season. So I'm leaning on a sell for the Senators because I don't know how much of an impact losing Tkachuk will be, either positive or negative. You're really not sure until they start playing, right?
Yeah, the Senators have been the team that everyone's selling on now, especially just because of the Brady Tkachuk traded. You don't get better when you trade a player like Brady Tkachuk. No. As much as they got a bunch of pieces and they did get William Eklund, you don't get better with that. At the same time, like between the two, you look at the Bruins and I'm looking at the Senators, I'm like, the Senators have the right pieces in place to just be a better team or to at least be in the playoff picture. You look at Tim Stützle, you're talking about a top line center, and probably, I know the NHL just put their rankings out of the best centers in the NHL, but he's got to be up there as one of the best in the NHL. I don't know, top 10, top 8, somewhere in that range where he's one of those elite centers in the NHL. And then you look at Jake Sanderson, who's one of the best defensemen in the NHL and really a number one defenseman there. It's interesting because you look at that and you're like, all right, last season, goaltending was a mess. Just from the top down, goaltending was just awful. Allmark struggle, and there was all this stuff off the ice about what's going on there. And then the whole team struggled in the net. And it's like, all right, if they just get decent goaltending, they're going to be back. And I think second half of last season, they got that. And then I look at the Bruins on the other end of things. I'm like, where's their top line center? Where Charlie McAvoy's a number one defenseman, but a different type of number one defenseman. And then it's like, in goal, they got elite goaltending that kind of propped up a team that wasn't that good. It's interesting because between those two, I'm like, I don't see either team making the playoffs. Like they're both borderline wild card type of teams. I don't see either, but then again, like between the two, I'm like, maybe the Senators just make that push anyway. Yeah. They're a better team anyway. I want to look around, looking around, they're in the big picture. There's 8 teams that have, over unders on point totals. Actually, by the way, interestingly, the Bruins have 89 points. That's their projected point total. And the Senators have 94. So 94 is like in the middle. You kind of expect, you're not surprised by either of those numbers. Like they're kind of in that, there's a lot of these teams in the middle. The teams at the top right now there are 8 of them. There are 8 teams that have a over under point total of 100 or more. There's the 3 in the Eastern Conference, which are the Lightning, the Panthers, the Hurricanes. I think the Panthers total is a little high. It's 107. Just like it's a little high for you're asking me. I think they're going to be good. I don't think they're going to pile up points like they did in 2021-22. But anyway, and then there's the 5 teams out west, which are Oilers, Golden Knights. You expect those 2, and then the big 3 from last season: the Wild, Stars, Avalanche. Is there a team? I just mentioned the 8 teams out there, and all of them are projected to get over 100. Is there a team you're circling?
To get over 100 or
and also I think it's really because I look at those 8 and I'm like, if you were to say who are the cup contenders in the NHL right now, there's a lot of teams in that murky middle where you're like, all right, they're good. If things go right, all of a sudden they're cup contenders. There's a lot of those teams. Those 8, I would say, are the cup contenders heading into the season where it's like you could tell in public. I think when you look at their point totals, 100 points, if people are expecting them to finish with over 100, the public perception on them is these are the 8 cup contenders. Yeah. And you look at them and it's like, all right, which ones really should you circle and say, all right, these are the cup contenders? And then there's a few that's like, all right, maybe not. But like what teams you look at around and you're saying, I want to circle these teams just before the season starts.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm going already the Hurricanes because I think they obviously didn't lose anyone. They didn't really add as at all either. But they have a really good team still, and their goaltending is still. I mean, now it's Bussy and Kochetkov, so they're kind of maybe maybe banking on the fact that without Anderson all season, and that Bussy and Kochetkov could be the tandem, I'm still thinking they're a cup contending team. So I'm going Hurricanes already. Panthers, I am saying they're a cup contender because, you're adding Brady Tkachuk to a team that is going to have Barkov back. That's a guy that they didn't have all last season. That's a huge piece of your team gone. The one question mark I have with the Panthers, though, is their goaltending. Because Markstrom, yeah, he's a good goaltender, and he's been good for the Devils. But he also has been horrible for the Devils, too. That's why they kind of moved on from him. Is he going to return to that elite Markstrom? If that's the case, then the Panthers are great. They're in the same realm, because if he can play as well as Bobrovsky, then that's fine. Because they still got a great blue line. They still got great depth throughout their lineup. That's the only one I think I'll circle the Panthers, but I feel like there's that caveat that the goaltending could kind of push them out of that. The Minnesota Wild, I think, is another interesting team because, I think they're a cup contender, but there's also things that could go wrong with them too. So maybe they're a middle team. But I mean, there's not, I don't know. There seems to be a lot of middle teams for me. I mean, the Avalanche are going to be great again. They're a team is just going to be there again. I think they're a cup contender. The only two that I'm really sure about are the Hurricanes and Avalanche right now, but there's just so many that could enter that conversation for me, right?
Yeah, I mean, you almost could talk yourself into all 8 of those teams. I was
trying to.
It's like you're just going through, and it's like, all right, well, which one to circle? And it's interesting. The one I almost want to circle. It's interesting because I'm like, I don't want to buy or sell them. I just like circle just because I'm like putting spotlight on them is the Lightning, where they're that other team. Because I think it makes sense the Panthers and the Hurricanes are the two teams in the Eastern Conference that everyone's saying these are the cup contenders, and people are saying let's just fast forward to an Eastern Conference final matchup between the Hurricanes, who've proven they can get over the hump, and they did it last season, and now they have to face the Panthers, where it's like, oh, now they really have to prove they're a cup contender. And the Panthers, who last season they weren't around, but it's like they're back and they have Brady Tkachuk now. And I know there's maybe that are older and there's some injuries to look out for. Everyone's talking about the Marchand injury, what's going on there. People don't really know, but everyone's talking about fast forwarding to that. And then I look at the Lightning, and I'm not going to sell the Lightning because I've been burned by that before, saying this is the year that they're going to drop off and they're going to fall apart. And I don't want to say that. At the same time, I wonder, are they still a cup contender when you haven't won a playoff series since 2022, which now all of a sudden you're like, wow, that's a long time. Actually, it's been a while, but where do we stand on them?
Yeah, the Lightning. I agree with you. I'm always. This was like the same thing as with the Bruins a number of years back, and I kept saying every season they're going to fall off. They're not going to make the playoffs this year, and then they just do. They did fall off eventually, but I think the Lightning are a team that there's the same way. I'm like, okay, this is the year that they're gonna just. I thought it was going to happen when Stamkos left. Honestly, I thought that was when he signed with the Predators. I thought, yeah, this is it. The Lightning are going to fall off. No, they didn't. I think it's any team that has Kucherov. I mean, you can't really count out. But I think this season they're going to miss Darren Radish because, I mean, you could say flash in the pan, one season, great season, came out of nowhere, 70+ points, and you're like, maybe has he just figured it out and this is what he's going to be, or is he just going to regress back to the mean, I guess. Because if he is that type of defenseman, they're going to really miss him. Victor Hedman, they're hoping that he'll be healthy all season, and that would be a huge thing because they really did miss him in the playoffs, right? So I think that's one thing. If he's healthy, they're pretty much, I think, that locked to be that Stanley Cup contender again. But if he's not, and Radish is that type of defenseman, they'll really miss that on the blue line. So I think their offense is still one of the top ones. And and Hedman is still one of the top defensemen in the league. So, and of course, Vasilevsky's, Vezina Trophy type goaltender. So I really think that if that's the case, then Lightning are still that, that threat to be there, even though they haven't really done anything since then.
It's one of those, again, it's the glass half full, glass half empty. Where do you stand on them? I think the Hedman point's the interesting one, because if there's any position or any part of this team that I would circle and say they're not as good here, it's that defense where Radish really was their power play defenseman. He was the one who was really producing for them. And Hedman, first of all, hasn't been that Norris caliber defenseman for a while, actually. I think it's almost non-coincidental that his drop-off in production coincides with the Lightning in the playoffs, where it's like they have not, where when he was that elite player, that player who could take over games, especially in the playoffs, that they were making the Stanley Cup final, and they were in the final, they were winning, they won the back-to-back titles, and now he's not playing at that level. He's also, Kucherov's just still producing at a high level. It's crazy what he's doing and what he could still do at this as he enters his 30s, and he still plays at that elite level. Hedman, actually, I think he's older. He's like 35. He might be older than that even, but it's starting to show, I think, with him, actually. And that's the one that it's like, that's a little concerning, where it's like he's in his 30s, he's getting older and not as good, and the defense doesn't have that player. I think like they missed that Mikhail Sergachev type of player, that player that who was there, a younger version, but a shutdown defense. I mean, he was a shutdown defenseman, but really good and younger, and kept that window open. They had to trade him to open up cap space. So it's one of those that I'm like a little concerned, but then again, the glass half full is Kucherov's still going to play at this level. Jake Gensel's still going to play at a great level. Anthony Cirelli, Brandon Hagel, Braden Point. You just mentioned all these players, and they're like, oh yeah, no, they're just going to be incredible. And then just to add, they're probably going to throw in a prospect or two, that because they have like one or two in Syracuse or in their system, they'll just throw them out there. I just want to shift over to the West, and I think the team that's hasn't been there before, but now I think we're starting to see them, is the Wild. And I'm just wondering, because I feel like a lot of people still want to pump the brakes on them, probably because Quinn Hughes is still in limbo about whether he's getting an extension, whether he's going to play out the season. But should we buy him more stock in the Wild?
I feel, again, there's a question mark still, because, and every year I say the same thing about this team too, is that this is the season that they're going to really miss a first line center, and they don't have one. Like, they don't have a legitimate, number one, like we talk about Tim Stützle, we talk about Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. They don't have those. Like, they haven't had one. When have they had one? Like, when have they had a legitimate first line center that you could say is a top 10 center? I'm thinking back, and I can't really think of one. Mikko Koivu, was he ever?
I was thinking, was he a center also?
Classified as a top line center? I think he was probably on a great team, a second line center. But, and I think that's why the Dylan Larkin rumors are around. It's like they want a top line center. And if they find a way to convince the Red Wings, to get Dylan Larkin, then I think they're definitely a Stanley Cup contender. But they've been kind of running with Jula Eriksson is a really good center. I think he's, again, like a Mikko Koivu type second line, one, maybe a 1B, but you can't really say he's a top line. You put him in those top 20 or whatever, top 32 centers in the league. Or not, I guess, but the top 10 type centers. So I mean, he's a great secondary guy, but they seem to be able to deal with that. And Hartman's been top line center, but on any other team or a contending big time team, you wouldn't say Hartman. You wouldn't say, yes, you're a top line center. I don't think so. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I think that's the biggest question mark with the Wild, because, they got Blake Coleman in the offseason in a trade, and I think he's going to really help the penalty kill, which was really something that they suffered with last season. But other than that, they didn't really add anyone else. And, Quinn Hughes, that drama is going to exist all season unless he signs an extension soon here. And I don't think they want that kind of hovering over, just like with the Canucks when he was here.
Yeah.
Didn't want that hovering over a season where, will he, won't he? And I think that's going to be something that they can say that's not going to affect them, but it will if it still hangs around.
It always comes back to the center question. It's always the same thing. It's like, they're great, but up the middle, they don't have the options. And I think they're kind of hoping some players that are younger maybe could step up. They're the one team that I know there's all this like offer sheet drama. And I mean, Leo Carlsson, the Flyers and Leo Carlsson really started this whole thing. I don't know the Wild's cap situation, but if there's one team that I would love to see make it work, and I guess I should stall here so one of us could look it up on Puckpedia or something. But if there's one team I'd love to see throw an offer sheet at Adam Fantilli, it would be the Wild, because that's the team that it's like if Bill Guerin would just pull that trick up his sleeve. I don't think they can do it. There's probably too many. There's probably, first of all, too much money that's going to be involved in it. And second, the trade and the picks and all that stuff, they don't have any assets to move. The Wild.
No, they used it all to get Hughes. And that's
so they can't do it. There's one team, though, I'd want to see find a way to pull it off. It would be them. Just because imagining them getting that number one center and really having one that like Fantilli, who just like you could work with Kaprizov and all the talent on the wing and like all the talents, Matt Boldy, like all the skill that they have. You're like just dropping Adam Fantilli into that would just be the final. It feels like a final piece for them, and it would be really cool to see. It's not going to happen. It can't happen. Like the math doesn't add up, or just all the logistics to it don't add up. But
yeah, they have no cap space. Like they have 1.15 million right now.
Yeah,
so
it wouldn't. Yeah, and there's no assets to move either to make it happen. They can't trade pieces back. They're the one team though, just for the chaos purposes, I'd like to see that. Just like we already saw the Leo Carlsson one, so imagine they were the ones that threw the offer sheet at Adam Fantilli. I want to turn just to almost like wrap up here and turn it over to the other side of things. And I know there's sort of this like Landon DuPont sweepstakes sort of brewing, and there's also some other draft picks that it's always the generational talents at the top 5. But is there a team that you could see that falls apart this season?
I mean, everyone's going to point to the Canucks because they were last in the league last season, and they're going to be, I don't buy into the fact that the Canucks are going to be a horrible last place team again, because you're looking at, unless they do some more trades, which I mean, obviously is possible. I think their defense is just going to not allow it. I mean, they're just, I think their defense is better than everyone kind of thinks. When, adding Alexiak, Luke Shen, they're going to be tougher to play against. And they're going to be better defensively because I think Malholtzer is a better coach in that aspect. And just the fact that it's a new team, the drama's gone. I mean, Pettersson could still maybe add to that drama if he comes to camp, not ready to go.
Yeah.
And that trade thing is going to always hang over. But I think there's not as bad as everyone's kind of projecting. That they're going to be last by a long shot and all that stuff. I mean, there's teams, I think the Calgary Flames, I think are going to be the ones that are going to be right down there. Obviously they were last season too, but
I guess to add, though, in terms of the point totals, the two teams with the lowest point totals are the Canucks and the Flames. 74 for the Canucks, 77 for the Flames. So they're the teams that I think everyone's expecting to be bad, and you can talk yourself into both teams just being better. I think with the Canucks that you're talking about with Manny Malhotra as their coach, it's even if they're going to be losing games, they're not going to be losing those like 6-1 or 7-0, like just tire fire games that you saw. That's the difference between being a well-coached team, I think, is that with Manny Malhotra, who's many people are high on Malhotra as a head coach, you're going to see a team that is going, even when March and April, when the team's out of it, you're going to see them lose like 3-1 or 2-1 games or 4-3, where they're going to be in it until the the third period or till the game pulls away, but you're going to see a more competitive team. And I think they might be in the conversation, but the thing that I'm curious about is that, because we see this every year, case in point, last season, everyone was like, the Canucks are a borderline playoff team, and they were the number one pick at the end of the day, or they had the worst record, not the number one pick, but worst record in the NHL. There's always that team that you're like, you're looking at them, the borderline team, or they're a team that's sort of in the playoff conversation, or even on the outside looking in, but all of a sudden by like mid-season, it's like, yeah, this team's in the draft sweepstakes. And I have 4 teams sort of circled for that, but I'm wondering if you have one team that comes to mind with that in mind. I guess I should just rattle off the 4 teams that I'm looking at and saying, all right, if things fall apart for them, you could see it happening, which is, you look at the Blue Jackets and the Red Wings in the East, which, I mean, there's no explanation. You don't need an explanation for either of those teams. No. Like the Blue Jackets, all the stuff that's going on with them this offseason. If they trade Zach Werenski, then it's even more so. They're in that number 1 pick sweepstakes. And the Red Wings with Yzerman, Larkin, all that stuff, where they don't have a GM. Maybe they trade Dylan Larkin, and just the Atlantic is better, where they could be the team that everyone beats up on. And then the 2 in the Western Conference that I'm kind of curious about are the Nashville Predators. I think they're an interesting one. And they're always the same team in the same conversation, which is they've just been mid since they've been an expansion franchise, which is Seattle Kraken. Yeah. Is any team, I mentioned four there, but is there one of those that you're like, they could collapse this season and then be in the number 1 pick conversation? Or is there another team maybe that comes to mind?
Yeah, you can definitely have arguments for all those. I'm going to throw the LA Kings in there. They don't have on Anze Kopitar this season. He's retired, and even though he was older, he was still a huge part of that team. And they didn't get anyone that I think will really replace him. They got a new coach. Again, they seem to be switching coaches every season. And he might, Laviolette might be good. He seems to be bouncing around teams too.
Yeah, but the only surprise is not a Metro team. But I think
right. He keeps. I mean, he's a good coach, and the Kings still have a lot of talent. But I think they could end up having where, they can't adjust without Kopitar. Defensively, because he did a lot for that team in that department. So I think not having him might really affect the team. And I could see them dropping off and not being in that playoff conversation, which they weren't last season for a while. So, I mean, they could end up, collapsing and not being as good of a team. Because I'm still not up with their goaltending, even though, Darcy Kemper's been pretty good. I'm still not really convinced that he can be that guy all the time. And yeah, I think the Kings are just an interesting type team to kind of watch for that.
No, they're an interesting team because I look at them and they're such an easy target they could collapse. And I think the hockey world's kind of rooting for them to collapse just because they're so boring to watch. And it's and when they backed their way into the playoffs, everyone was like, oh man, we got to watch more. Everyone was looking around saying, please let the Sharks sneak in so we can see what Macklin Celebrini looks like in the playoffs. Or even we'll even take a Nashville Predators team with some of the players they have, but it's like the Kings just back their way in just to get Anze Kopitar 4 games, but meanwhile the Avalanche just blow the doors off of them. And it was everyone's saying, okay, this is not fun. So everyone's secretly, I think, rooting for a collapse from them. Usually
the fact that their overtime losses, 20 of them last season, my gosh, you take those away, where are they? They're not that good.
I love the overtime loss thing also, because I think it was if you were to I think I looked into this. If you take away all the overtime losses, first of all, the Kings aren't in the playoffs, but if you take them all away and you reseeded the conferences where you had the 1v8, the way everyone's rooting for, what everyone wants is a 1v8. I think the funny thing is that the Wild would have faced the Oilers in the first round, which would have been a 4 versus 5. You would have had I think the Golden Knights would have been the 7 seed, and they would have had to face Dallas in the first round, which
Yeah.
would have been completely different. So yeah, it would have all that would have been out there, would have been interesting, but I digress. But the Kings, yeah, they're the team that, yeah, they have Panarin and they have some high-end talent, but it could fall apart and implode. Usually those things happen with Peter Laviolette. Usually those things happen in the second season of it with him as a head coach, but could happen this season. And the Kings getting the number one pick, it would be interesting if they, like, let's say traded Drew Doughty and then got the next generation, but better Drew Doughty, not better Drew, like, yeah, maybe even better Drew Doughty, where they get Landon DuPont and it's like they just go from one to the other. That would be actually, it'd be a fun story. I think the NHL would actually root for Landon DuPont in LA if they had to pick a team that he had to go to. Probably it's one of the ones that I'd say they'd choose, but I digress. So, all right, that's all we got. I really appreciate, Matthew, you taking the time out of your busy day and bearing with me. It's full of technical difficulties, so I really appreciate it. And if you have any plugs, the floor is yours. Anything you're working on, anything big in the works as the season gets underway.
Yeah, I'm continuing. I've got a series going for the Canucks, just projecting different players, their season coming up, what they're going to do. I've got a few out there already, so take a look at those. It's going to be interesting for the Canucks. There's lots of, again, they could be. I'm not saying they're going to be a Stanley Cup contender or a playoff team or anything like that, but I think they're going to surprise a lot of people this season, and that they might be not as bad as everyone says. So. Look out. I'll be doing a bunch of preview stuff for the Canucks going into the season, which, it's coming up pretty quick with the early start this year.
No, it is. And it's around the corner. And and the Canucks are going to be, I would say they're going to be more interesting than I think people give them credit for. A lot of people are just going to be like, they're that team out west that I won't pay attention to, at least for East Coast people like myself. It's like, all right, they're out west, I'm not going to pay attention. But I think they're going to be a lot more, as I said earlier, they're going to be a lot more competitive. Or certainly you're not going to get those late season shenanigans that I think you see with a lot of terrible teams up there. And I think that's really what progress I think is going to look like. But I think you're going to, under Matt Halter, I think you should see some of that. And then some of the young players coming along as well. But for now, that's all we got. We hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, which you can do to Mike Fink Hockey Writer YouTube channel here. Also check out all the great content at the Hockey Podcast Network, where you could find this and a whole bunch of great podcasts. But until then, tune in next time for another great episode. Thank you.